Hello everyone, welcome to Homeschool. So this is the third part of the chapter Biological Classification. In the previous part, we have seen the kingdom Monera. We have completed the bacteria or eubacteria and archaebacteria as well, mycoplasma and everything which comes under the Monera. So today in this class, we'll be taking up the next kingdom, that is kingdom Protista. So we already have seen 5 kingdom classification and we know what exactly Protista includes. So Protista will include the single-celled eukaryotic organisms. The prokaryotic organisms were placed under Monera and the eukaryotic, that is single-celled eukaryotic organisms, are being placed under the kingdom Protista. So today we will take up Protista. And what exactly that includes? It includes single-celled eukaryotes. So as it says, these are eukaryotic organisms. What are eukaryotes? Eukaryotes are the one which have well-defined nucleus as well as all the membrane-bound organelles present in them. Prokaryotes didn't have a well-defined nucleus. As we had seen in the last class, there was no nuclear membrane surrounding the genetic material in the bacteria, isn't it? It was a naked genetic material. So if we have a cell like this, inside the cell, the genetic material was freely suspended in the cytoplasm. Hence, and there was no cell, nuclear membrane around the genetic material inside the cell. Hence, we called it as a prokaryote and there was no well-defined nucleus. In case of eukaryote, inside the cell, there is a nucleus like this and there is one defined membrane. This defined membrane is a nuclear membrane and the organisms which have such kind of well-defined nucleus, those are called as eukaryotic organisms. And all the organisms which are placed under the Protista are eukaryotes. Fine, it means they have well-defined nucleus, and all cell organelles. All cell organelles, or in other terms I can also call it as membrane bound organelles are present. And mostly these Protista or the organisms which are placed under the kingdom Protista are aquatic in nature. They are aquatic in nature. Some organisms, not all the organisms of Protista, few organisms usually have flagella. Some have flagella and cilia. We will see in the later parts the examples which bear the flagella as well as the cilia. Then, coming to the reproduction part. Usually the reproduction is asexual and sexual also. We will again study examples which are under the asexual and which usually prefer the sexual mode of reproduction. Then, the Protista are being classified into various groups actually. So we will just see what kind of organisms are being placed in which group of the Protista. So we will divide it into 3 categories. I'll write it here. Protista. So first category is photosynthetic. First category is photosynthetic. It means these are autotrophic organisms. They are Autotrophs. Under the photosynthetic protists, all right, the first category in the protist is the photosynthetic protists, and under the photosynthetic protists there are certain groups of organisms again, and among them the first one is chrysophytes. All these organisms or all these groups will be studying in detail again. What are chrysophytes? We will study in detail. Fine. Then next one is Dinoflagellata. First one is chrysophytes, second one is dinoflagellates, and the third one is euglenoids. Euglenoids. These three group of organisms belong to the photosynthetic category of protists. So these are autotrophic organisms. Then second one. Second one is protozoan protists. Protozoan protists. Under protozoan protists, there are again certain organisms or types of organisms, and these protozoan protists are majorly heterotrophs. They are majorly heterotrophs, and the groups of organisms which comes under the protozoan protists are, the first one is amoeboid protozoan protists. The first one is amoeboid protozoan protists. Second one is flagellated protozoan protists. Third one is ciliated protozoan protists, and the fourth one is sporozoan protozoan protist. Under the protozoan protists, there are again four categories. The first one is amoeboid protozoan protist. Second one is flagellated protozoan protist. Third one is ciliated protozoan protist. And fourth one is sporozoans protozoan protist. Then the third one is saprophytic protist. What you have to observe here is we are categorizing this majorly based on mode of nutrition. So here we mention it as autotrophs, here we mention it as heterotrophs, and next the third group we are taking it as saprophytic. So you should have an idea that this classification or this categorization is majorly dependent on the mode of nutrition. All right, the third one is the saprophytic. And the group which we are going to study here, or most of the organisms which belong here, is the slime molds. I'll write it here. Slime molds. Okay, so the protista, under the protista, based on the mode of nutrition, it is being categorized into three categories. The first one is the photosynthetic protist, which are autotrophs in nature, and the three group of organisms which fall under the photosynthetic protist are chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, and euglenoids. Then the second category is the protozoan protist. Under the protozoan protists, we have amoeboid, flagellated, ciliated and sporozoan, protozoan protists. And these are heterotrophs in nature. And the third one is the saprophytic. These saprophytic, what are saprophytes? Saprophytes are the one which majorly depend on dead and decaying organic matter, and the organisms which belong to the saprophytic group is the slime molds. Fine. And what are the categories of the protista or characters of the protista? These are majorly single-celled eukaryotic organisms and they are aquatic in nature. Since they are eukaryotes, they have a well-defined nucleus and all the organelles or the membrane-bound organelles are present, and some have flagella and some have cilia also. And the major mode of reproduction is sexual as well as asexual mode of reproduction. So this is a basic introduction for the kingdom Protista. Now we will see all these one by one in detail. So firstly we will take up the chrysophytes. Chrysophytes majorly include diatoms. So they majorly include diatoms, and what we have to remember here is chrysophytes are autotrophs or they are photosynthetic in nature. And where are the diatoms majorly found? They are usually, as we already know, protista are, or organisms of the protista are aquatic in nature, and these chrysophytes, they are usually present in the freshwater and marine environment. They are present in freshwater and marine environment. Okay, then these are microscopic. These are microscopic and photosynthetic. What does microscopic means? Microscopic means you cannot observe them by your eyes, by your naked eyes. You need or you have to observe those under a microscope only. You cannot watch them, you cannot see them through your naked eyes. Fine. And since they are photosynthetic, we can take them as producers. We can take them as producers. Coming to the structure of the chrysophytes, especially the cell wall. They have a cell wall with two layers and each are overlapping on other. Like, I'll first write it. Cell wall has two layers, each or one overlapping the other. One overlapping the other. It means that if this is one cell wall, okay, this is one cell wall, the other one is overlapping this. It is, you can imagine it in the form of a box or something like that. See, a box and all, how it is usually one will be on the bottom side and another will be on the upper side, and usually you put it inside it. So there is one covering, this is second covering. So similarly here also it is like it has been overlapped. One is overlapping on the other. So this is first layer of cell wall, this is second layer of cell wall, and one is overlapping on the other one. And both of these cell walls, okay, both of these cell walls are made up of silica. The cell wall is made up of silica, and silica is one of the hardest materials. So what happens? Say, try to understand it. So at the bottom of the ocean or something, imagine you have diatoms, and since the cell wall is made up of silica, when the diatom cells die, okay, when they die, Of course, the organism is dead, but the cell wall, which is made up of silica, is still surviving, or it is still stagnant. So, what happens? Imagine this is the bottom. This is the bottom of the ocean, and at the bottom we have some cells of diatoms here. We have some diatoms, and these are dead now. When these are dead, the organism inside is inactive, but the cell wall, it cannot be destroyed because it is made up of the silica, which is quite harder to destroy. So now what happens? Fresh diatom cells start growing on these dead diatoms. Next, after several years, a particular period of time, this second line also will die off. Inside the cell becomes inactive, but again the upper layer of, or the cell wall, which is made up of silica, is not able to be destroyed. So again, this is preserved for a longer duration. Longer duration is not some 10 years or 15 years. It is like billions of years. This silica layer is preserved for billions of years. Then again the third one. Upon that, so it keeps on building layers by layers, and these layers, okay, these layers will make up the diatomaceous earth. Very often we use a word called as diatomaceous earth, So how is it formed and what exactly does it mean? It is the diatoms, layer by layer, they are being formed and they are being preserved for billions of years, which will form the diatomaceous earth. Because the silica cannot be destroyed so easily, hence it gets preserved at the bottom of the oceans or at the bottom of the earth, and that gets built up layer by layer to form the diatomaceous earth. Fine. Then, so now this particular layer of silica is gritty in texture actually. This is gritty in texture. Gritty is something like sandy texture or something. So that is called as gritty. Hard, sandy, rough is called as gritty texture. And since it gives a gritty texture, the soil from the diatomaceous earth is used in the polishing and all. It is commercially well exploited. Alright, it is commercially very well exploited, and some commercial uses of this is, the soil is used in the polishing here. We'll write it down. Soil is used in polishing. Alright, the first use is the soil is used in polishing, and the second one is it is used in the filtration of oils and syrups. It is used in filtration of oils and syrups. And very important point which you have to remember here is these are the chief producers in the oceans. I'll write it here. Diatoms are the chief producers. They are the chief producers in oceans. All right. So usually the organisms which are photosynthetic in nature, they will be called as producers only, and upon the producers, other organisms which are non-photosynthetic will be depending on the producer organisms. Clear? We'll repeat it again. Chrysophytes, these are the organisms which mainly belong to the chrysophytes are diatoms, and these are present in the freshwater and marine environment. They are microscopic in nature and they are photosynthetic. So since they are photosynthetic, those are the producers also, and they have cell wall which is made up of two layers, wherein one overlaps the other, and the cell wall is made up of silica. And since the silica is one of the most hardest materials, it is not easy to destroy the silica cell wall. Hence it keeps on getting deposited at the bottom layers of the ocean, and it gets built layer by layer. As in, the organisms will die, the cell becomes inactive, but the silica cell wall will be deposited to form the diatomaceous earth. So this deposition will go on for billions of years, not for a smaller duration like 100 years, 20 years, 30 years. It goes for billions of years. And this is quite gritty in nature. What is gritty? Gritty is like very harsh material, or very sandy or very rough kind of material is called as a gritty material. And due to its grittiness, it is commercially well exploited. And some of the uses are, it is used in the polishing, or the soil is used in the polishing, and it is used in the filtration of oils and syrups. And very important thing is, diatoms are the chief producers in the oceans. Clear? Okay. Next one. So first one is chrysophytes we have seen. The second one is dinoflagellates. Dinoflagellates are also the marine organisms, and these are also the photosynthetic organisms. So we will write down the characters one by one. The first one is, these are marine organisms, right? Second one is, these are photosynthetic in nature. It means they can prepare their own food. And very important thing you have to remember in the dinoflagellates is their cell wall. The cell wall is made up of cellulose here. Okay, here we call it as stiff cellulose. It is not the normal cellulose, it is the stiff cellulose. All right, a cell wall is made up of stiff cellulose. And how exactly it is being arranged is, in case of chrysophytes we had seen, it was like one was overlapping the other, isn't it? So here the cell wall is seen in the form of interlocking pieces. I'll write the picture, just try to understand it. I hope you have seen, everyone has seen a Rudraksh, isn't it? We wear it as a very sacred thing. So Rudraksh everyone has seen. How exactly that looks like? See, it will be like this, and here you'll be having a hole, isn't it? So it will be like this, isn't it? Here we have a opening, and here we have a opening, right? Now, so this is a longitudinal opening. This is a longitudinal groove. If there is one more groove like this, then this is called as the transverse groove. So if you this is a transverse groove and this is a longitudinal groove. So if you join the edges, how exactly it looks like? It is looking like there are 4 interlocking pieces here, isn't it? In the form of interlocking pieces, which is showing some grooves or some notches here. So the structure goes like, it is like this. So this groove, try to understand, this groove is called as the longitudinal groove. It is longitudinal groove, and this is transverse groove. This is transverse groove. As the name suggests, it is dinoflagellate. What is di? Di is two, or it means that it has two flagellas. Okay, so one flagella runs in the longitudinal direction only. See, this is the first flagella which is coming down like this. Alright, the first flagella which is coming down along the longitudinal groove, and the second flagella, okay, second flagella is running, it is running the transverse groove like this. It means it is rotating like this. Fine, imagine you have 4 pieces here, 1, 2 and 3, 4. All right, so we have 4 pieces like this. So this is the longitudinal groove. Transverse is like this. So it is rotating, or it has been through that transverse section. Fine, it is present in this notch like this. It is going, and from the back side it is curling, and then it is coming back here. Okay, so there are 2 flagellas. One is present along the longitudinal groove, and the second one is present along the transverse groove or the transverse notch. So this both the flagellas are mainly helpful in the movement of the organisms. Fine. Then one more important thing you have to remember here is these dinoflagellates are seen in different colors. Okay, they are seen in different colors. I'll write it here. The dinoflagellates are seen in different colors. So how are these dinoflagellates getting these different colors? That is due to the presence of different pigments. Colors due to pigments. Due to pigments. There are many pigments. It might be green, blue, red and everything. Usually like we very often we get to see some tides, and those tides will be in colors. In some you might have seen the photographs wherein half part of the ocean will be in the blue and half part of the ocean will be red. So how is that difference, or why is that color difference? Or what is making the colors to look like that, differentiate like that? So that is mainly due to the presence of these dinoflagellates. Fine, their pigment, they will be in the huge number usually. So their pigment will make look some part of ocean in a one particular color and another part of ocean in different color. So one good example for red dinoflagellate. Fine. A red dinoflagellate is Gonelax. I'll write it here. Red dinoflagellate, and the example is Gonelax. Gonelax, and this is responsible for the red tide in the oceans. Fine. So along with these characteristics, it is also able to produce certain kind of toxins. These dinoflagellates will also produce certain kinds of toxins. These toxins are harmful to other organisms or other marine organisms, and many chances are there that those marine organisms can even die because of consumption of these toxins. Fine. So these toxins are quite dangerous to other marine organisms. Then another property is bioluminescence. Bioluminescence. So since I have already said that they have pigments present in them, so as the pigments are present, they also can show the colors. Along with the colors, due to the presence of a protein called as luciferin. luciferin, it can also show the property of the bioluminescence. Fine. And many a times they are also called as the fire algae because of the bioluminescence as well as the presence of the pigments in them. They are also called as fire algae. Fire algae. Then coming to the reproduction. So in the reproduction, it is majorly asexual. Reproduction is majorly asexual in nature. Hope you have understood the dinoflagellates. They are majorly marine and they are photosynthetic in nature. The cell wall is made up of cellulose. Remember, it is a stiff cellulose. Fine. And the structural organization is, it is usually present, it is in the form of the interlocking pieces like this. Fine. It is in the form of interlocking pieces which will form certain grooves. Okay, which will form certain grooves and notches, and they have flagella. They have two flagellas. One is along the longitudinal groove and the second one is, see, if this is the first one which is running in the longitudinal, the second one is somewhere here. It is running like this. It is surrounding like this. Fine. It is along the transverse groove and one is along the longitudinal groove. And example, as there are different colors, as I said, one example is the red dinoflagellate, and that is Gonalex is the example for that, and it is responsible for the red tides in the ocean. And other properties of the dinoflagellates are they produce toxins and it have the bioluminescence property, and the reproduction is majorly asexual. Okay. So, next group of organisms in the photosynthetic protista is the euglenoids. The best example for the group euglenoids is the Euglena. Euglena, we had already seen it in the previous part of a video that Euglena is an organism which shares the characteristics of both plants as well as the animals. So the characteristic of plant is it is photosynthetic in nature, and the animal is it is without the cell wall. Hence it shares the character of both plant as well as animal. Hence Euglena is considered as the connecting link between the plants and animals. I repeat, Euglena is considered as connecting link between plants and animals. So what are the characteristics of it? So these organisms are usually the freshwater organisms. These are freshwater organisms, and very important character you have to remember here is the presence of a protein rich layer called as pellicle. Pellicle is a protein rich layer. It is a protein rich layer which acts as cell wall. Which acts as cell wall to the euglenoids, and due to the presence of pellicle, or the pellicle will make the organism quite flexible. Alright, the flexibility of the euglenoids is due to the presence of the protein rich layer called as pellicle, and as we know that it is photosynthetic in nature. Since it is photosynthetic in nature, it should definitely have the pigments which are required for the photosynthesis, isn't it? So I'll write it here. They are photosynthetic, and since it is photosynthetic, it has got the pigments which are required for the process of photosynthesis, and which are the pigment? Majorly the chlorophyll, and it has chlorophyll A, B and xanthophyll also. It has majorly, it has chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B and xanthophyll. Along with that, some minor pigments also it has got. Fine. But the beauty of this particular organism is only during the presence of sunlight it is photosynthetic. When the sunlight is not there, this same organism will start acting as heterotrophs. Fine. See, I said it is sharing the characteristic of plant, that is the photosynthesis. But in case of plants, what happens? In case of plants, photosynthesis is happening during the daytime. During the night time, when there is no photosynthesis, the plant is not acting as the heterotroph, isn't it? The plant is still photosynthetic in nature day and night. Whereas in case of Euglena, in the presence of sunlight, it is acting as a photosynthetic organism. In the absence of sunlight, it is acting as a heterotrophic organism. Fine. It acts as heterotroph. It acts as heterotroph in the absence of sunlight. Okay, in the absence of sunlight. So, how exactly the organism looks like? So, the structure of Euglena. So, something like this. Okay, so this notch or a depression like structure is called as the gullet. This is called as gullet, and from the gullet the flagella will arise, and it has two flagellas. One flagella is a long flagella. Okay, one is a long flagella, other one is a short flagella. All right, other one is a short flagella, and this long flagella majorly helps for the movement. It helps for movement or locomotion, whereas this small one or the short flagella, this will mainly create a whirlpool like scenario there. It means, imagine you have when it is acting as a heterotroph, okay, when it is acting as a photosynthetic organism, it is preparing the food inside only. But when it is acting as a heterotrophic organism, at that time this flagella, imagine these are some food particles present, and this flagella will start vibrating like this. It starts vibrating like this, and due to that vibration, it is present in the water, isn't it? So when there is vibration, when you just put a stick in the water and when you start shaking, don't you think you usually observe a whirlpool like condition? The water starts rotating, and everything, what particles are present, they comes to the center of that whirlpool. So similarly, so in the in the water, this small or the shorter flagella, it starts vibrating, and due to the vibration, the whirlpool like situation or scenario is created, and whatever food materials are present in the surrounding in the nearby surroundings, so that will come to the center of that gullet or the center of the organism, and the food will be captured easily by the Euglena or the euglenoid organisms. Clear? So the long flagella is mainly for the movement or locomotion, and the smaller flagella is mainly used for capturing the food particles. Fine. Then reproduction. The reproduction is mainly by the longitudinal binary fission. It is again one beautiful process happening in the Euglena. Reproduction, it is by longitudinal binary fission. Longitudinal binary fission. So we know how the organism looks like. Imagine this is the organism present and we have flagella here. Okay, during the reproduction, what happens? This flagella will go off. During reproduction, there is no flagella present. So both the flagella will disappear and there is this particular, beside the gullet, we have two parts. So this will first divide, or this will first get multiplicated. It is like it becomes like this. It becomes like this, and later this will be joined. It is like this. Fine. This single organism or the single euglenoid organism gets divided into two, and then later this gets divided and they get separated into two euglenoid organism. Later again the flagella will be arised. Fine. So this process is called as the longitudinal binary fission. Okay, in your higher classes you'll be studying how exactly it happens and everything. So as in now, so this information is enough for you guys. Fine. So remember, it is by the longitudinal binary fission. So I hope euglenoids is clear for you. So we have completed chrysophytes, dinoflagellates and euglenoids. All these are the photosynthetic protists. In the next part, we will take up the slime molds and all the other groups which we have seen in the beginning. Fine? Okay guys, so subscribe the channel and please watch all the videos properly, make a proper notes of it and do learn the classes very, very clearly. Fine. And also tell your friends to learn the biology in a very easiest way.